when we started brainstorming, well, if we do documentary, are we gonna commit because, it's a commitment. And then okay, well, who's gonna come to documentary? And what do we wanna talk about with documentary? Because there's so many facets to documentary. It's not just make a film, then what you gonna do with it? How are you gonna pay for it? Are you gonna do festivals? So what we've tried to do is put together a panel that speaks to all of those, from filmmakers to producers to what happens after it, what does an impact campaign look like, all those things. So that is what we're going to talk about today. For those who don't know me, I would never consider myself, well, I have a master's degree in film studies, so it's not like I don't consider myself a filmmaker, but I had never made a film. I had been a producer, I was never a director. And then I did this film called Eggs Over Easy, BlackWomenFilm, that was picked up by the Oprah Winfrey Network and Discovery Plus. And the reason that I was the director is because I ran out of money and had to pay myself nothing. So that's what happened. We ended up on Delta Airlines. It was a wild ride that we are still riding. So that's my background, and that was why I wanted to jump in and say, oh, we doing that. Put me in, coach. Okay, so I would like to introduce our guests today. I know most of them personally. I think, well, I'll just run over their bios briefly. Let me pull it up. This is what 51 looks like. Yes. Okay, so we're gonna start with Tamra. So Tamra has been this is maybe her third or fourth time doing panels with us, usually for a different topic. Raise your hand if you have heard of Surviving R. Kelly. If you are familiar with the juggernaut that was, like my phone was going up, text was going up, that was Tamra. So, and she also did the Casey Anthony story. So we'll let them introduce themselves more in depth, but I just want to give you a heads up to what the heavy weight of this panel. All right, next we have Keocia. Where are we? Keocia Howard. So Keocia is over at GPB. So, well, like PBS, but Atlanta, GPB.
Statewide.
The state of Georgia. When you wonder, how do people get their shows on PBS? What are the partnerships like? You see, we've been hearing about, well, most recently a lot about PBS, but we've heard of PBS because Sesame Street, so we're familiar with it. Well, that is Keocia, that's her job, that's what she does. So we have her on, we have Anjanette Levert next to me. So Anjanette, I know because she's over at Spelman in the documentary space over at Spelman, but she also is a Peabody Award winning producer. Yes, she got her Peabody was it last year or the top of this year? The end of last year?
It's been a while.
And we're so excited about it. I woke up, looked, I'm just scrolling on Instagram, living my best life. I was in bed. And I'm like, wait, what is this? Anjanette, I'm typing out crazy in caps because I was so excited. And she's all chill, oh yeah, girl, come on together, it's fine. We're gonna have a toast. And I'm like, but you want to be Peabody? So she was, I think I was probably far more phased than
No.
Did anybody watch the Oscars this week? There were 2 Black directors who were nominated for Oscars. One was Ryan Coogler, and the other is Crystalline Hampton. Nominated director. I told you some heavy hitters. And then last but absolutely not least, this young woman, we share a mentor. Our mentor, Tina McGarrett, who passed a couple years ago. But Miss Tina, some of you, I think some of y'all, the students, know her. This New York Times bestselling author, she called and was like, I'm coming to Atlanta, but I can't meet with you until after I have to do something at Morehouse with one of my girls, one of my schoolgirls. I'm like, well, who is your schoolgirl? Because I'm your schoolgirl. What is happening? She put us on the text and was like, you have to meet. Her name is Kara. You're going to like her. You need to meet her. Oh, well, why? So, Kara Walker, who we have with us, she is over and the founder of the Morehouse School the Human Rights, what is it called? The Human Rights Festival. I want to get the name right. And I went to that this, like 2 weeks ago, was it? 3 weeks ago?
Which one?
The Human Rights Film Festival?
Which event?
The boxing movie.
Oh, undercard.
And it was so good. I'm like, oh, this is what they're doing over at Brown's. So we're excited about it. So when you have questions about festivals, we have people here who can answer those questions. So please give it up for K-Rob. Woo! Yeah. All right. I would like to start with just, if you could give us a quick backstory, like not your whole life, but how did you get to where you are in film now and the projects that you're on? How did you get there? And what do you think is, when you look at what's happening in the documentary space right now, what does that look like for you? Tamra, Dr. Tamra.
Well, I started in reality TV with Crystal, and we did a show called Growing Up Hip Hop. That was like my first show. I franchised that show for the Atlanta version one, and those people drove me crazy. And so I did that for 5 seasons, and then I was like, okay, let me see if I could, do documentaries. I don't know why I had that thought in my head. And so the first documentary I did was Surviving R. Kelly. So I was like, well, now I have to live up to myself, But that is just, I'm a researcher at heart, and I just love like telling true stories. And so that's pretty much like how I started with Surviving R. Kelly. I thought it was coming up on like the 10-year anniversary of his acquittal, and so, but the news was like, no, this is like currently happening now. I did a lot of research. I have a lot of resources in Atlanta, made some contacts, and then I built relationships as I was doing Growing Up Hip Hop and reality TV. They kind of helped me partner with a production company, William & Murray Productions, and we pretty much did that. So once I got started doing docs, now nobody will let me back out. Even if I want to try to do something else, they're like, no, I don't think you need to do that. And then true crime is something that a lot of networks are constantly like asking for. And I was just like, I'm not a dark person, so I don't understand. Like I was telling her, I was like, I'm a light, so I don't know why I'm in this dark place. But shedding light on dark stories is like a gift that I believe God gave to me. He knew that I would, rise up to the challenge. So that's the reason why I continue to do documentaries now.
Hi everyone. Again, my name is Keocia Howard, and I do not have a background in creating documentaries. My background is actually in live television production. And so I started working at GPB as an intern back in the day. The year was 2007. I was a student at Georgia State University, and I wanted to be the next Oprah. And so I was like, we're gonna go and work at a TV station and do all the things. And as fate would have it, I fell in love with producing and started doing all of the live programs that we have at GPB. And then this crazy thing called the pandemic hit in 2020, and that kind of changed everything. And so my role at GPB went from being on the ground producing shows to helping GPB find programming locally that we could keep going on the air, that we could keep local programs on the air. And so that's how I kind of got thrust into this world. It's been an amazing journey because I get to work with so many documentary makers and so many filmmakers. Most of them are white men, and so I am happy to be in this space with all of you because there's so much out there that can be done and so many stories to be told. And so for me, I feel like my job is to help people get their stories out. If you have a story, you want to tell it, it's my job to help you get it from your head to the masses, whether that be locally throughout the state of Georgia or through PBS national distribution throughout the country. So that's a little bit about me, and thank you guys for having me.
Thank you. So the question is, how do we get started, and
Like
where
the
are
state
we
of,
now?
with the state of doc now, what does that look like for you?
Okay, so I got started, so I was a journalism major, and I took an ethnography class. It was a graduate level class, and we were watching all these ethnographic films, and I said, wait a minute, do people get paid for this? And that started my years-long journey to becoming a documentary filmmaker, and so that's how I got started. And first film in, well, I made my first film on my own, and I was just incensed. I was working at a cable news entity that's based here in Atlanta, and I was just incensed around their coverage of Freaknik. So actually, my first documentary is that I literally went to like Best Buy, and I was like, what camera can I afford? Okay, that one, okay, give it to me, right? And my colleagues, because we're starved of what's it called, creativity in news, people helped me. And, you know, it took a while, but, you know, got the film made. And so it did, you know, at that time, it did well in the Southeast, but nobody else really wanted to touch it because of the stigma that the event had on it, right? So that was my first film. And then I was like, but it's very newsy. I want to do something else, right? Like, how do I make it be like a film? So I went on to get my MFA at City College of New York, just because at that time, that was like the only place that you could, that was one of 2 places that specialized in documentary, right? So fast forward, and the state of the industry today, right?
Exactly. That's why we're gonna get into it.
Yeah. We have to take our skills, take them maybe someplace else in an industry that appreciates our skills in a different way, stack money, come back. Because these films chase you down, right? You're like, I'm not gonna make that film. And the film is like, no, you are who I'm gonna come through, right? Like, you try to shake it off and you're like, no. So you're stuck with that film, whatever film you're supposed to be making, you're stuck with it, right? So you might as well just go ahead and get it out. But it's okay if it takes, it takes time. I know nobody wants to hear 3 to 5 years, but hey, that's what we do. 8, 9, you know, so go, but you don't need to be starving to also make the film, right? So, but to be continued. I have a lot to say on that.
Hi everyone. I want to say first thank you to the Black Women Film Network for curating this incredible panel here. Because I am not from a documentary background. I actually was a professional dancer who incorporated dance, music, and film as a senior at SUNY Purchase. So that's how, you know, my creativity was sort of played out. My co-director on the film, The Devil is Busy, that was nominated for an Oscar, Keocia, she's the one who was working with Spike Lee as an editor, and she was like, you need to come over here and do this work with me. And so that's how I transitioned into documentary filmmaking. As Tamra said, I was in the trenches with her in the reality world. I did all the reality shows here in Atlanta, Housewives, Loving Hip Hop, Growing Up Hip Hop, By the Side of the Hip Hop, all of that. You know, so I think having those skill sets really allowed me to have the confidence to step forward, you know, because I was producing those shows, and step forward to be a director. And so the Oscar nominee is my first directing credit as well. So it's, you know, just about really being patient with yourself, taking, like I said to Tamra, I was like, girl, you were the talent whisperer. And I learned something by watching her talk to the talent. So those skills also allowed me to sort of like, you know, be the sponge when you're in the field, and then hopefully you can gain upon those. So thank you. And the state of the documentary world is the state of the film industry. We're always going to need stories. So figure out a way to shift, as Anjanette said, to tell your story. One thing that I will always say to any filmmaker, figure out a way to pay yourself as well as you're paying for other people. So if that means you need to go on YouTube, the blah, 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 to learn how to shoot or to do audio, something you can cut down on someone in the industry, so that you can get your film done, do that. I do not suggest people maxing out their credit cards. However, if that's what it's gonna take to really get your passion done, hold on. Make sure you get points on your credit card.
Okay. That I co-sign.
So, how did I get to where I am today with documentary? Curating documentaries, mostly. My name again is Kara Walker. I am from North Carolina by way of Brooklyn, New York. And my cousins always remind me, they say, don't forget that you were born in Brooklyn. I'm like, but I grew up in North Carolina in a small rural town. Most of you, probably none of you have heard of it except for CC. The name of the town is called Scotland Neck.
Yes.
You've heard of Scotland
Not
Neck?
too far from Fayetteville.
Pembroke, Lumberton.
We have a North Carolina delegation with us.
So where I grew up in North Carolina, it was a rural area. Town was 10 minutes away in one direction, 20 minutes away in the other direction. And there was not a whole lot for me to do out there, but read books, watch television, right? Go to school. I was not my grandparents owned a farm, but I was not the one, okay, to be outside. I didn't even like going outside. My family, mother, father, I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters. My mother and father would say, you need to come outside with the family. And I'm like, but I'm reading this book. So who's gonna argue with you reading a book? Reading this book. But fast forward, I went to North Carolina Central University. I graduated from North Carolina Central University. There's a difference. And studied journalism and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, decided that I really wanted to make some money. So I went back to school to what is now Kennesaw State, but used to be Southern Polytechnic State University, and studied information design and communication, and became a Black girl who codes, right? And did that, got really good at it, and I advise people, young people today, you can get good at something, but get good at something that you love to do, or eventually you're gonna hate doing it. In the meantime, I was a creative at night. I was making short documentaries, mostly focused on my family, and just because I thought that they were amazing people and they should be documented on film. And then as I started doing that, creating these short films, I realized, oh, I'm getting to understand who these people really are. So that just sparked my interest more in documentary filmmaking. I met Tina in the early 2000s, and I'm trying not to get emotional about Tina. It's still kind of fresh, but I started following her around with the camera, and then she introduced me to Pearl Clegg, and I said, oh, well, can I create a feature-length documentary, just about Southern women writers, Black writers? And they both agreed, and so I was able to actually produce and direct and shoot my first feature-length documentary in the early 2000s. That led me to one day waking up when I was working at Morehouse and deciding that I don't want to be a Black girl who codes anymore. I want to be a Black girl who gives a platform to filmmakers. Morehouse is a great place to do that, and we can create a safe environment, a safe space for doing that. And so in 2019, I launched Morehouse College Human Rights Film Festival, and now I get to spend my days and months and years watching lots of documentaries, short and feature length, and features, narrative films as well, but I've gotten very good at curating great films, and so as far as the state of documentary filmmaking today, I don't know if I would have as much to add as these ladies these other ladies on the panel, but what I will say is that documentary filmmaking is still storytelling. Still requires a beginning, middle, and end. It still requires good techniques. And I don't, Cece, my colleague, is here with me today. She's our film festival producer, and it's like digging through, looking for a needle in a haystack. So I'll end there, and I'm sure there's more to add.
Plenty more questions. Thank you so much, ladies. Our next question, I'm gonna probably start with Keocia, but I wanna get check the temperature of the room and see who we have in here. Do we have any people who have already made a feature film, like you've done a feature film before? Director, producer, which all of the above? Yeah. So hold your hand up. Okay, so we have any shorts? Anybody made shorts? Oh, this is a good room. All right. Anybody have an idea of something great and you're gonna jump into it? Boom, that's the rest of them. All right. Okay, so hopefully we answer everything, or at least help you like kind of figure out what the next steps may be. And then if we have time, some time permitting, we'll do a Q&A. All right, Keocia, what is the process of working with PBS or GPB?
Yeah, so it's actually very open doors. So films come to GPB from several different angles. Most of the time, people are just talking to somebody they know that works at GPB, or they may even email. I don't suggest you do this, but they will even email the president directly and just be like, hey, I have a film, because then he just sends it to me. Like, it always comes to me. But we actually have a website, our program submissions website, gpb.org/program submissions, very easy. And you go on there and you complete our form that asks some questions about your program, send a screener link, and that brings it to me, and that is where the process starts. Depending on where you are in your process with the film is gonna determine kind of what happens next. Sometimes people have an idea, they have a pitch deck, and they will send that. I need a program. And so usually there's a meeting that takes place where we talk about the state of your program and whether or not it might be a good fit for PBS, and I walk you through what that submissions process is. But there's a review process for every film that comes through. I pull together a committee of people to give feedback because I can't be the only one watching all of these films, right? But we do a committee process, and then from there, it is my manager and a couple of other executives who do a final pass on programs, and we decide whether or not they're gonna make it to broadcast. And then there are also programs that we watch and we're like, this could be a good candidate for national distribution. And then there's a separate process for that where we work with the distributors who provide content for PBS nationally.
Do they have to already have filmed it, or can they bring an idea?
Both and. So you can bring an idea, and I have met with many producers who just have an idea to kind of talk through what those next steps might be. I can't approve anything until I see something, right? And so for me, I feel like public broadcasting, because of the nature of my job, I work for you, right? Like, my job is to help you get your program from point A to point B. And so if that means taking a meeting and talking about an idea that you have, even if it's not fully fleshed out, even if you haven't recorded anything yet, then I'm gonna do that. And I've had producers who I've talked to, you know, from the beginning of an idea to them creating the program, and now it's on the air. Or a producer who I've talked to at the beginning, they create something, I think it's great, and then my manager says, we can't. So it kind of runs the gamut, but for me, I'm a producer at heart, and so I love connecting with producers and kind of helping you through that process of delivering your baby, if you will.
Very good, thank you. I'm gonna go to Kara. What are festivals looking for? Is it short? Is it like the timing? They want something that's this many minutes, or is this too long? Is this too short? Is it the quality? Is it like thematic? What are festivals looking for?
All of that. Looking for all of that. We're looking for our festival with shorts. We ask that they are 30 minutes or less. Features for us are, feature-length documentaries are 90 minutes or less for us. So we're looking for story. We're looking for, the theme, our festival is a Human Rights Film Festival, so we're looking at the theme festival, but I argue that so many things fall within human rights, things that you wouldn't necessarily think of that may not be so obvious. And we're really looking for good storytelling through documentaries. You can tell a story, and we're looking for that through line that takes us from beginning to end, and so that the audience understands, okay, now I'm better educated about this, or even documentaries are sometimes entertaining, but maybe I'm enlightened by this. Maybe I am moved to some action by this. But festivals are, in terms of documentaries, we're looking for all of that.
Festivals are also very expensive. I'll just chime in. One of the things, so when we did Eggs Over Easy, I didn't know I needed like a whole budget for festivals. And Anjanette was like, girl, you need a budget. This is gonna be more than these little $500. Like, you're gonna probably look it out and then connect. That was through Real South. If you're not familiar with Real South, you can go to their website. They do a lot of stuff to just inform you if you are not informed, or to help you get to the next level, to help you connect some dots. So Anjanette was there and connected me with Darisha Kai. And Darisha had just won an Emmy. She sat with me longer than I would probably sit with anybody. God bless her. She sat with me and went through every piece of my documentary, and then was like, what's your plan? Girl, I don't know. I produce. I'm just here. So when Kara mentions that festivals are looking for all the things, they may be looking for all the things, and you may have a wonderful, amazing project. Also, you gotta pay. So keep that in mind, put that in your back pocket, to also decide when you're looking at your budget, how much. You might be interested in a festival that's free, one that's $5. I would go through Film Freeway and say, like, where are the Black people, where are the women, who is looking for me? If they're looking for a Black woman, I'm a Black woman, and it's $5, I'm gonna do it. And then you have like Cannes Film Festival, or Tribeca, or the bigger ones, and it's way, way more. And then I was watching something with Ava DuVernay, and she was like, it's a numbers game. So when I did my short, I had some success. We ended up selling Eggs Over Easy before I needed to do festivals. But with some short stuff that I've put out, we looked at like, okay, how to pay for this. So we'll do like 100 festivals and get a hit on like 20 of them and win enough of them to get picked up somewhere. Shout out to Aspire for picking us up. Hey, Tina. But it took all of that to do it. So when she's speaking on festivals, just also keep that in mind. Do your research at the beginning of your project if you can, because you gotta have a strategy for that. Go ahead.
I would like to add, a lot of film festivals will give you waivers. So you should also reach out to the film festivals, especially the ones that you really want to submit to, because they can give you a waiver. And there's an organization called Firelight Media that also you can join, become a member there, and they also give a lot of waivers.
You can't join?
Oh, well.
You can join if you are Oscar nominated, but maybe not. You can join. Thank you so much.
Or I know someone at Firelight, call them and ask them for a waiver.
I was just gonna add early submission, because those are usually less expensive. And then the other thing is that, and also in terms of think of who is in your film, who they're connected to, because hometown is gonna come out, right? They're gonna buy out the whole theater, right? So wherever your film is, who your cast members are a part of, you wanna really tap into that. And then also, write a letter. Listen, I really wanna be in your film festival. I saw that you did XYZ. This also look for films that are similar to yours, and because that film festival likes that film. is similar, right? So you can always reach out to them. And then yes, like my film was, my people live in Birmingham. So I wrote to them and I was like, out 8 a.m. screening, I can do it. Yes, I will have a full house. Yes, all my family was there, at 8 a.m. with coffee. I had coffee and donuts, and people came out, like more people than they ever would have had, at an 8 a.m. screening. So then, when I said, I will have my family there, and they were like, yeah, come on, we got you, right? So just also thinking about those things too.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna go to Tamra. How do you weigh the risk in terms of choosing topics? So you mentioned you're like, oh, I'm a light and I work in darkness. I was watching your Instagram when you announced that Casey Anthony, and those people started going up in that comment section. They were like, why would you showcase her? Terrell, no, we like you, but they were letting you have it, and you had such nice responses like, is this not a story? Are we not going to investigate? Oh no, we're going to look at it. So how do you pick, like,
Not you going all the way back.
oh yes, all the way. So how do you decide, like, this is a good fit for me that's not gonna like crash my career, or like these are real conversations. How do you decide what is like a story that you really want to tell regardless of outcomes, or maybe the outcomes don't matter? Like, how do you decide that?
I think initially I don't care. I don't look at like what people are gonna say. I'm not a person that really cares about what people say. I mean, look like I do, but I don't. But but I think it's like, I'm like, okay, this needs to be told and the reason why. So the reason why I did Surviving R. Kelly is because I saw other white counterparts who were speaking out, but I was like, I know this happens to us as well. And so when that came out with R. Kelly, I was like, okay, with my connections, I was like, I know I can get to the family and try to help them, with trying to get their daughter back, because I lived in Atlanta at the time. So I think with R. Kelly, it was like, I'm a mother, I live in Atlanta, I have resources, I have a network, I can make it work. Like, I thought it was gonna be a 2-hour documentary, and right, I mean, and then 5 years later, it was, 3 seasons and following the trial, and me almost getting kidnapped and all that stuff was not even in,
That's my question. How are you deciding, like,
yeah, so
the
when
risk is worth it?
I didn't know. That's the thing. It's like, you know that you want to tell a story and it's very important, but you don't know, like, the screening was, we got bomb threats. Like, so the screening had to be shut down in New York. Then they found out that we lived in a hotel, like where we were in the hotel with the victims. And then we got notes. And yeah, so there's a lot of things behind the scenes that you don't know that, and that was season 1. So I was like, okay, Lord, just help me make it out.
Yeah.
And then when the network comes back and they say, hey, like, we gotta follow up, like, this was, people wanna know, and I'm like, well, they need to just Google it and figure it out. It come through me. And then I'm like, then, you have the victims that are like, and survivors, I call them, are like, Tamra, please just like do this for us kind of thing. And so you have to, like, I just put myself aside. And I'm like, okay, this is for them. So they wanted to show how they were going to trial and that they were going to get justice, because a lot of them never had therapy. And I had to be the advocate for them to have therapy. And the network is like, well, we can't do that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll find somebody who can.
There you go.
Are you guys okay with me doing that? Because I'm going to do it regardless if I'm letting you know, but I'm not asking for permission.
Come on.
And so they were like, well, you can do whatever. So I got them counselors and was able to get them, therapy and everything. So I was like, okay, that's my reason why I'm doing this. So then we did season 2, and then I'm like, okay, whew, I'm done. And they're like, no, we gotta, like, he's going to trial, we gotta follow that. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. I said, point blank period, I'm not doing it. This is it. I can't do it anymore. And then when you have the families are like, they gotta go through it. So then I have to take myself out again and, talk to them and like, come on, Tamra, you can do it. They're telling me I can do it, And I'm like, okay, I can't let them down at this point. So like, let me do this. And that was when they found out what hotel I was at, was almost kidnapped, had to run after the truck to jump in. It was crazy. But, I was like, that's it. I can't do anymore. Then they came and they said, hey, you want to do Diddy? I'm like, I do not. Surviving R. Kelly.
And barely, okay, all right.
So yeah, but Casey Anthony, like Keocia said, you know, something called the pandemic happened, and she had reached out to like some people that knew how to get in contact with me, and they were like, hey, there's this lady named Casey Anthony. I'm like,
A lady.
I'm like, Casey Anthony, the lady like in Florida? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Like, well, she wants to have a meeting about telling her story, and I'm like, what? You know, so during that time, I just was like, okay, at this point, I'm a journalist. Like, you know, I was like, you know, people are gonna come to me after Surviving R. Kelly. I'm gonna have to be open to it. So I had a conversation with her, was on Zoom with her, was like staring at the lady, like, is this really you? Like talking, you know, like, why do you want to talk to me? And she said, well, you're a Black woman. You did Surviving R. Kelly. I like the way you told the stories, and I feel like you can tell my story. Because if I was a Black woman and I was on trial back then, I would not be sitting here talking to you today. So how do you say no to that? A white woman telling you, I need you to tell my story, because it wouldn't be that way if I were Black, you know? I was like, yeah, that's exactly what she said. And of course she tried to tell me how to do it, but I was like, wait, this is what I do. You know? But she was like, you know, I don't want people on there that are talking bad about me. I'm like, girl, that's everybody. It's all of us. So, but I was like, you know, you gotta tell it from a journalistic point of view. Some people, you gotta remind them of the story. Some people gotta, you know, they've never heard the story before, especially like, you know, TikTok was, they saw crimes on TikTok. I'm just here to tell you. And anyway, so yeah, that happened, and then I was like, okay. She was like, I was like, I know Oprah talked to you. Like, me and Oprah have a lot in common, but the zeros we don't. You know, so I was like, I'm not paying you to talk. You don't want any money, right? She's like, nope. I just want to tell my story, and that's it. She's like, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And she hadn't, you know, she never testified at court. I look back, and she never had interviews. Like, we never seen her. And so I felt like it was a duty to like figure out, how did she get acquitted from this? Like, you know, that story was never told. The evidence, we never saw the evidence. We just saw Nancy Grace being upset about it, you know? And so that she got off, everyone's like, how did she get off? How did she get off? So I thought, you know, it's an older story. You know, nobody really cared, or not necessarily cared, but you know, it's an older story, but I was wrong about that.
Very. I don't want to say you're wrong, but
Very wrong.
they were very interested in this story. Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Did she do it? We can't answer that today.
You gotta watch it on TikTok.
Thank you, Tamra. All right, and we have like 5 minutes, so I want to get these two important questions in. Crystalline, what was your strategy for navigating the road to the Oscars? Were there certain festivals? Did you do impact campaigns? Tell us what that looks like once you, because many of these people already have their films. Now what?
So once your film is complete and you look at it and you believe in it and you think it can go far, then you start submitting it to film festivals. Because in documentaries, that's where really a lot of the groundwork and the swell of your film is going to take place. Because if you think about it, the people who come into film festivals are people of like mind. So you're going to get your family and you're going to get people of like mind. So I definitely, you know, highly recommend you going for the film festivals. Start high, you know, go between, you know, like play with where you submit. Don't only do Sundance, because Sundance is really, 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 really hard to get into. But, you know, think Sundance, but start somewhere a little bit lower and try to work in. And so we premiered our film in New Orleans in 2024, in October 2024. Really great film festival. We only got a special mention. We did not win the jury. And we got the audience awards. And then from there, we got into Doc NYC. HBO came on to pick it up. So how did HBO get involved? So my co-director has worked a lot with HBO on several films. Her documentary short, not Lawrence County, How We Get Free, was a documentary short in 2023 that was that got shortlisted. And she had worked, she edited Music by Prudence, which was Roger Ross Williams' first film, and the film he won an Oscar for. So, you know, she had a relationship with them, and she had also done, because the film is through Soledad O'Brien Productions, and they had also won a lot of awards through a film called Black and Missing that was on HBO in 2022, somewhere around that. So that's how we got through the door at HBO. But it was because of the film festivals that I was like, hi, that really sort of propelled us and gave us the confidence to even try to get a larger distribution. And how we got to the Oscars, I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm gonna say it was a lot of social media. I think the content in our film, The Devil is Busy, about a Georgia abortion clinic, for those who don't know, that after the Dobbs decision was made, Georgia became the six-week term limit here, and we followed this security guard basically at a clinic, and we just followed, it's the representative of the day in the life at this clinic. And so that's what the film is about. It's a very polarizing subject matter. But our security guard, what makes it really compelling, she's a faith-fueled woman and deeply religious, and to sort of show that sort of juxtaposition or the irony of the protesters outside and the chaos to this woman who's praying for the safety of all the women inside and the staff and the providers, just brought a different quality, or I don't want to say a humanity to the subject matter. And I think it just spoke to people. And so once we got into the shortlisted realm, I was still like, wait, what just happened? Because, you know, it's like, oh, we got shortlisted for Doc-NYC and Cinema Eye. That's so nice. The film, again, came out in October of 2024. This is happening in October 2025. The film premiered on HBO in September. And so, you know, there was like this interest, and so I consider we were a little bit behind the 8 ball, because we really wasn't, we didn't know it was gonna keep going. We thought, oh, we got shortlisted, that's great, you know, but it kept going, and people really, it spoke to people, and so we just had to like really stand up and start marketing. We got a publicist after we got nominated. Oh. Again, that's what I'm saying, we were late on that, but we got a lot of news coverage in a short period of time, and the film went really well. We were being, you know, like with predictions, we were like #2. Throughout, even from January until the Oscars. But, you know, it was an incredible ride. I made a lot of wonderful connections with some of my sheroes. My work is all about empowering women, so I'm always like, yes. And actually, can I give a shout out? Yeah. We have Adriana, who is an AP on a series that came out on PBS called She Was First, that I directed. It's a 6-part series, episodic series, that shows pioneering women and who revolutionized the arts. And so that just aired last night, so I'm so glad to see that.
Thank you, you're welcome. Last question, Anjanette, Levert. Where is the money? Where does the money reside? How do we find the money? Where do we need to go to get the money? Who do we call for the money? Where does the money reside?
No, I don't know. I think that's Tam.
Yeah, that was that. I am an advocate of using their money, meaning networks, and even if you like, I co-produce with a lot of bigger production companies, so I don't have to use my money for the ideas that I have. And my team has, I would say, like, because we develop a lot of, you know, projects, and we also develop projects for networks that we don't necessarily attach ourselves to. But I always say they got the money, so find your resources and your people, connect, and I say use their money. People have submitted or wanted to submit like their already made projects to me, and it's great, it looks great, but it's like it's hard to pitch it to a network because they're like, well, who did this? And you know, they have their idea in a way that they would do it. So I always say, like, put your idea on paper, create a pitch deck, pitch it to people, like come to these conferences and pitch it to people that you meet, and then use other people's money. It don't have to be white people, just other people.
Okay, I just independently produced a documentary. Who are composers here, Reggie? Excellent composer, he's local, great to work with. But I will say, do your deep dive into the research with grants. Because there are a lot of grants out there that's still giving money, and some of them are a little more challenging to get breakthrough, but there are some that's like, ooh, they just like your idea. So just for instance, if your idea is about, I'm gonna say abortion since we're talking about that, my film is about that. Go to Planned Parenthood and see if they have funding. Or go to Ford Foundation to see if they can, if you can partner with someone. Go to Artemis Feminist, or Film Fatale. Like, all of these organizations have money, and you can try to try to find funding through them, but also just the regular grant rate is also very helpful. Because once you get one grant, you usually get more. And that's something I learned as a dancer. That's the reason why I started working with Keocia in the first place, is because I had become a New York Foundation fellow. And she was like, how did you get that money? Whatever. And I was just like, this is what you have to do. And so if you get that one grant, the doors open up.
I just briefly wanted to add, for public broadcasting, it's a little different because there's a lot of rules around funding and how a funder can be represented. And so what we call underwriting, you might think of like a commercial. You can't do commercials on public broadcasting. So I always tell people, go after foundations that are attached to the larger brand. So like she said, Ford Foundation, because every corporation has a foundation that's attached to them that's usually a 501c3 or has some type of charitable contributions type of arm that might be more willing to give money to your program. And then also, I would say, think about that from the beginning. You may have to self-fund part of your program to get yourself started, but especially if you know that public broadcasting is an angle that you want to push for at some point, you have to be very careful with what your underwriting looks like. And there's a bunch of guidelines there, but just keep that in the back of your mind as well. And also within public broadcasting, there are several avenues that you can take to help fund your program through Black Public Media and some other independent producing organizations that are out there who have grants and other programs that can help you get funding for your show.
Thank you so much. Anjanette, were you gonna jump in?
Yes, I was just gonna quickly just say is that I wanna echo what Crystalline is saying, is that what I'm really seeing is that film grants, all of us are applying for that. Y'all are applying for it and I'm also applying for it, right? So definitely looking at your topics and who people are related